Hi, BookTube, it's Amy, and autumn here in Canada is truly upon us. Today was the first real day of cardigan weather, so I'm cozy here with the windows in the apartment all shut up and my cardigan on, and I thought I'd read some more from the journal of Emily Shore. And we are on chapter 4. Just to refresh, that this is the diary of a teenage girl from the United Kingdom in the 1830s, and it was published for readership for the first time in 1891. And this is the 1891 edition that I'm reading from. But chapter 4 covers May to December of 1833. And I don't think I'm going to do too many entries tonight because my voice is feeling a little bit weak. But we'll do a few pages here. May 16th, Thursday. I did wake at the proper time, or was woke by the children, and at 5 o'clock Louisa and I took an exquisite walk through the wood, Whitewood. We went very slowly, and at almost every step Louisa called out with justice, "Oh, wonders!" The nightingales were singing in great numbers. We saw 2 of them perched in the middle of a tall oak. There was also a blackcap hopping among some low bushes. I went a good way across the heath with a trowel to the bogs to get flowers. What grows here chiefly is a cotton grass, which has a stalk about 4 inches high, tipped with a waving substance which envelopes the seeds. It looks just like the cotton which is put into the ink glasses. When it is in great abundance, the place seems to be covered with snow. I took up several plants of the Drosera rutidifolia, or sundew. It is not yet in flower. The leaves are small and red and covered with gluttonous hairs, which catch flies in great numbers. I took up beside what I think is the Pendicularis sylvatica, a pretty pink flower, and with some others a most extraordinary plant which looks like the creeping Citius, and we have a note here, Cereus, Cereus, and so it's quite likely that Emily herself made an error in the spelling of the identification of that flower. It runs along the ground in singular joints, which twist and creep in a singular manner, and are all covered with either very minute leaves or prickles. I brought these home with Louisa's help, planted them in my garden, and came in at 7:30. Mamma takes a walk in the wood every morning to hear the nightingales and gather lilies of the valley, which are now extremely abundant, and when gathered, scent almost half the house. Besides which they are very beautiful. I particularly admire the curl outwards of the blossom. May 18th, Saturday. In the afternoon, a lark, which Mackworth has long wished to buy, arrived. It seems to be full grown and is almost twice as big as a sparrow, of a very elegant shape and with a beautiful head. The color is a malted brown and black. The breast is whitish with a cast of yellow. There are a few hairs at the origin of the beak, and he has a crest which he commonly keeps lowered. He is very tame and eats daisies out of the hand. He never seems frightened, but I pity him very much for being a captive. May 19th, Sunday. Papa went to Cockney Hatley between services. Mr. Parison called and, among other things, told us a curious fact in natural history respecting a fly-catching plant akin to the Venus flytrap. A philosopher of Cambridge, I think, conceived the idea of feeding it with meat instead of flies. He took 2 healthy plants of this sort and kept them in the same place, but one was carefully deprived of every sort of animal nutrient, while the other, though kept from all flies and other insects, was supplied with very fine shreds of beef put into the trap where the flies were caught. This one flourished, while the other languished and died. May 20th, Monday. For some time in the morning there was a thick fog, but this afterwards went away and it became clear and fine. Mackworth's lark is a very amusing bird. It is let out of its cage every day. The goldfinch, when let out at the same time, is unbearably imprudent to him. He trots up to him and eats his hemp seed and drinks his water and pecks at his turf, which he is always provided with. The lark does not like this. He opens his mouth and screams and sometimes drives off the goldfinch, who, however, comes back again with the utmost assurance and impertinence, and has once or twice fought with and conquered the lark. These scenes are very amusing. Once, when Goldie was quite intolerable, the lark attacked him, but being unluckily worsted, resolved on retaliation, ran off to the intruder's cage and began greedily eating his canary seed. The goldfinch looked on very peaceably, being himself engaged in theft. I always take the part of the lark. It is quite droll to see him beaten by a bird as small again as himself. May 21st, Tuesday. At about 6:30, I went out alone into the wood. It is on one side very thick and entangled, full of briars and bushes, but on the right it is covered with grass, free from underwood, and filled with tall firs and a few other trees. I went into this part, and for, I should think, 10 minutes, watched a nightingale flitting about from tree to tree, and often perched on a tiny twig, so slender that it seemed unable to support it, and even shook. He was singing all the time. Last night I sat up until 9:30, partly in expectation of Arthur Mulkin, whom we hoped to see this week, and partly because I had promised Richard and Lord Desart that I would stay to see the letting off of some fireworks, which Mrs. Keel had sent him from London as a present for his birthday. But I was several times ready to fall asleep, and I am determined I will never sit up so late again, though Lord Desart declares I assuredly will. I should like very much to disappoint him, and this night I went to bed at 20 minutes after 7, falsifying his prediction this night at least. May 22nd, Wednesday. Mamma and Papa went into the wood after our dinner, and when they had come in, Arthur arrived, a most welcome visitor. He had walked from Cambridge in 4 hours and 5 minutes, and was not tired. This was about 4:30. I believe it was almost 5 o'clock when we had another very agreeable guest, Mr. Howard, whom we had long expected, but unfortunately he will only remain with us a day or two. However, Arthur is going to stay for a fortnight or 3 weeks. Everybody walked about the garden after the parlour dinner. The weeping ash is almost in full leaf. The walnut is quite out, and most other trees. There are great feuds about the beauty of the weeping ash. Lord Desart infinitely prefers the common one, and Mr. Taylor joins him, even hating the weeping ash, which, however, Mr. Howard joins with Mamma in liking, and calls the other cold-looking. For myself, I ought to like the first least, because it is a monster and quite artificial, but then it is very rarely so large and handsome as ours is, and it droops so gracefully. May 26. Louisa, according to Lord Desart's desire, called him early by tapping at his door, on which the following dialogue took place. Lord D. Who? Louisa. Get up. Lord D. What o'clock is it? Louisa. 25 to 5. Lord D. Oh dear me. Stretches himself, probably. Certainly goes to sleep again and does not wake till 8. May 27, Monday. Unhappily, I did not wake till 10 minutes to 5, and consequently did not see so many birds as usual before breakfast. I wandered very far over the wood, Foxhill, and came to its termination on one side, where it is enclosed by a hedge, on the other side of which is a field and a deep clay ditch. All about here were immense quantities of bryony, of which there are 2 sorts, only one which is real bryony. The Latin name is the Bryony dioicea, and is a large plant with tendrils, large rough leaves, and thick stalks. The flowers grow on long, slender, naked fruit stalks, and are of a pretty striped green. The other is the Tamis communis. The stem is much slenderer, but full as long. The leaves are very full and glossy, and of a bluer green. The flowers are smaller and more numerous. This plant twines extraordinarily. 2 or 3 roots generally grow in one patch. The stems shoot out and lay hold on other stems of bryony, until they are so twisted together that it would take days to disentangle only one. The tendrils curl remarkably and seize even on hyacinths and deadwood. The first plant belongs to the class of Trindria monogyna, and the other to Hexandria monogyna. That is, according to the new arrangement of Thunberg and Withering. In the system of Linnaeus, they belong to Monocia pentandria and Dioecia pentandria, the imperfect classes, which are now mixed up with the others. And my poor knowledge of flowers, botany, and scientific and Latin terms for plants are unfortunately showing here. But continuing on. These flowers are mixed with wild clematis, which is not yet in flower. I took one of the latter, and with great difficulty a piece of tamis. The difficulty being on 3 accounts. First, the twisting of the stem. Secondly, the excessive hardness of the ground, which is a dry, cracked clay. And thirdly, the great depth of the root, which is oval, white, juicy, rather woody, and as big as a small pullet's egg, sometimes as a full-sized hen's egg, perhaps even bigger. And I think we'll stop there for now, because we're at about 11 minutes, and I don't think my voice is going to take me much longer here. It's a little bit late in the evening here, but I had the desire to read at least a little bit before I head to bed. And so we'll leave it at that, and I'll be back with more of chapter 4 in the next few days.